It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 221, entitled, It Doesn't Make Sense That It Doesn't Make Sense. It was recorded on Monday, the 22nd of August, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and I'll be joined by three WordPress guests. This week, we have Kathy Zant, we also have Nick Diego, and Maciek Palmowski. There's a lot of WordPress news to talk about, as there always is. First off, we kick off talking about the WordPress plugin ecosystem and the fact that Newsletter Glue has decided to drop their support for their repo plugin, and also WP Optimize has decided to start a new and curious pricing structure based upon point releases, not annual subscriptions. We talk about the WooCommerce marketplace and the opportunities that may be there. Gutenberg is going to have a new modal, potentially, which will onboard you into setting up the editor just how you like it. WordCamp US is just around the corner, and Contributor Day is something that you might like to be involved with. We also talk about the wizard, which Visual Composer has got in a recent update. And then we talk about two of Stella's products, Flux Checkout as well as Cadence WP. They've got an option to update the way that WooCommerce works in every single way possible. And we also get into the security of Ring doorbells and how your voice box, your larynx, is less developed than that of other primates. I'm going to have a couple of weeks off. In fact, I think 3 weeks off for my summer holidays. So thank you for your ongoing support, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Hello. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the Dance. No, I'm not going there. Very nice to have you with us today. We are joined, as always, on our This Week in WordPress show. You typically got three guests, and we've got three fabulous guests today. We've got our very regular co-host, Kathy Zant. How are you doing, Kathy?
Doing very well here in rainy Texas.
Oh,
very excited about rain. We haven't had rain in months, so it's like really nice.
Okay. Well, actually, peculiarly in the UK, I think probably across Europe in general, Maciek, you can tell us in a minute, there's basically no rain. Rain has just decided it's not a thing anymore. And in the UK, it not raining is like there's no tea around.
Yeah.
So drought conditions here. People are now being told not to use water in certain situations and so on. But anyway, Kathy is the product manager for Cadence at Stella WP. More on that later. She also dabbles in security and hacker culture. She's helped organize both WordCamp Phoenix and WordCamp US. More on that later. And she's also contributed to WordFest Live in a minor role as well. So welcome back to Kathy. Appreciate having you here. We're also joined by Nick Diego. How are you doing, Nick?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Is it raining?
It is not. Nope. It is a nice sunny day here in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. Nick Diego is a developer advocate at WP Engine. He can be found creating educational content, building plugins and themes, and contributing to WordPress core. What have you been building plugins and theme-wise lately?
Well, admittedly, I've been so tied up in my developer advocacy role. I haven't been building many plugins and themes, but I'm doing a lot of contributing to WordPress, getting excited about 6.1, which will come out later this year. So.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. And well, anyway, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Lovely to have you on again. And right, here we go. Right, just get the lungs ready. I'm going to try Maciek's surname. Maciek is joining us. Maciek Palmowski. That's not right, is it? Let's be honest. You're nodding.
It's really good enough. And also, you get bonus points for Maciek. It's really great. Really great.
That bit I've remembered. I don't know. I think when I first met you, I wrote down the word magic or something like that, and it's got into my head.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Maciek is a WordPress developer, works at Body, more on that later, as a WordPress ambassador. After hours, he spends most of his time trying to find interesting news for the WP Hours newsletter, or he goes cycling. Oh, cycling, that's kind of cool. As is the WP Owls newsletter. Is that going strong still, the WP Owls?
Of course it is. Of
Nice.
course it is. And I can even say that Nick will be a guest editor soon. So
Yeah.
really.
Oh, new news. Why isn't that not on the bio?
Wow.
Oh, that's lovely. That's really nice. Loving the WordPress community. If you fancy sharing this, probably the best way to do that is to go to, I don't know, Twitter or whatever and do wpbuilds.com/live. Once more, wpbuilds.com/live. If you go there, you've got to be logged into Google if you want to comment because it's YouTube comments. The other option is if you are in our Facebook group, you can go to wpbuilds.com/Facebook. But they anonymize you. It's about the only thing that they appear to do, sort of from a security and privacy standpoint, but they anonymize your avatar and name. You have to click on a link, chat.restream.io/FB. And then you can comment. If you don't want to do it anonymously, that's what you'll need to do. Already is a few nice people hopping into the comments. It's a pleasure to have you here. Might as well just go through a few of those. Nice way to begin things, isn't it? Rob Cairns saying, good morning. Happy Monday, WordPress peeps. Indeed. Thank you for joining us, Rob. And he's named you all one at a time. And me as well. Thank you. Rainy Toronto says Rob. Oh dear. Peachanary. Hi, Peacher. Peacher, I know that you wrote me a message just before this show went live, and I confess I read it with seconds to go, and I'll have to decline if that's all right, because I just didn't get a chance. I'm really sorry. She knows what that means, but nobody else does, so there you go. But what else we got? Cloudy, Connecticut. Cooler this morning, says Peter Ingersoll. Well, it's nice to have you with us. And also Cameron, who was on the show last week. It's bedtime, Cameron. Go on. Off to bed. It's like 11 at night or something. And when the time zones change in a couple of, what's it called? Daylight saving, when that changes, that'll be Cameron out of the show for 6 months or so, he says, because it'll be like 1 a.m. before we start. Lovely to have you all with us. I really appreciate it. Very nice. Feel free to drop any comments in if you like. Keep them polite. You always do. But nice to have you with us. Okay, let's get started. This is our website, wpbuilds.com. You've seen it before. I'm not going to waste any time on it. Let's get stuck into this. Right, post status. Had an article this week from Dan Knaus, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly, called Winning Together in a Decentralized Plugin Ecosystem. Now, it references 2 plugins in the article, one which we'll mention in a moment called Newsletter Glue, but also another one called Organized WP. And I confess, I haven't played with the Organized WP plugin in any way, shape, or form, because that wasn't the intent of this piece. The intent of the piece was, what about a new pricing model for WordPress plugins? Because at the moment, you've got free. That seems to be the way of doing it. There's also lifetime, and there's also annual. So you subscribe to something, and typically that's for support and updates. Well, although I've seen this model elsewhere before, it doesn't seem to be common in the WordPress ecosystem. Organized WP have taken the tack that they're going to charge every time there's a major release of their plugin. So you buy it once, and then let's say you have to wait, 12, 15, 18, 24 months until version 2.0 comes along, and then you pay again. And although it's a little minor tweak, I think there's some hidden benefits here. From my point, if the plugin development is slow and deliberately slow, let's say it's a plugin which kind of reaches your doorstep and does everything it needs to do already, and it doesn't really need features and updates in that sense, I probably do feel like this is quite a nice model for pricing. I just think it's a bit curious, a bit different, so I thought I'd mention it. So as always, Maciek, Nick, and Kathy, feel free to just interrupt each other, crosstalk. In some way, we'll figure it out, but somebody's always got to go first. So over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good idea to start using this model because as we talked a bit before the show, Sandy uses it, right?
Yeah, Sendy is a PHP application. You send out email with it basically through Amazon and those places. Yeah,
and really sometimes when we just need few features and we really don't care about the updates for us as users, such model can be really great. We don't have to worry about subscription. Also, in my case, I really don't remember when I used any support that is included in most subscriptions, because I always try to solve something myself. I can even correct the code, whatever. I just do it like that.
Yes, you're in a
so,
very different
yeah.
position to the typical user.
Yeah, so, but still, I have to pay for the support, and I don't need it. And in such case, I just could have the plugin pay for it once. On the other hand, for the developer, it may be problematic. It may be problematic because such a developer may end up in a situation that I think Advanced Custom Fields had at some point, when they had all of those lifetime users like me, and no one wanted to buy a new license. And the moment when Delicious Brains announced or even asked, hey, if you are using our plugin, maybe change your lifetime license into this new subscription one. And there was a huge outrage. So this pricing model can be troublesome for the creator, but on the other hand, it doesn't close the door as the lifetime model can do. So I think, yeah, I will really watch carefully how it will work, and maybe some other plugin creators will try to use this pricing model.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. The whole thing about you not needing support, or maybe. So I'm thinking, in my head is a plugin. I'm not going to tell you what it is because that wouldn't be a good plan. But I've got in my head a plugin which I recently renewed. I'm pretty sure that there were very few updates during the course of the year, because I watched that stuff quite carefully just because of this show, and also I didn't reach out to support. So there's a part of me at the minute going, I'm not sure about the value of that. But equally, here's an interesting point. Teresa, I hope I got your name right there. I've clicked on the wrong one. Sorry. She says that's horrible for those of us that charge clients. So that's a really interesting point. If you're building websites for clients and you're offsetting the cost and you want that to be predictable, yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay, over to Nick or Kathy if they've got anything to add.
Yeah, I think that model works really. I'm not going to pass judgment on their pricing model, but from my perspective, as I've built and sold a few plugins, is that I think that pricing model works really great if you're in like a closed ecosystem. So I think like ScreenFlow, which is another app, has a similar pricing model. Like they give you updates for like a version, and then if you want to get to version 10, you have to pay that upgrade fee or whatever. That's like standalone ecosystem. They're their own thing. Mm-hmm. But in WordPress, you're like plugin conflicts and changes to WordPress core you need to do updates for, and there's so many things that you may need to change and update the plugin that you might be doing a lot of work and then having to maintain like different versions. Like if someone's on version 1 and someone else is on version 2, and you got to do fixing bugs in both of them. I just think that it might be a little bit challenging for the creator, but that's the road they've chosen, so I'm sure they have a plan for it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, though. Have you got any thoughts on this, Kathy?
Yeah, well, this isn't new. This is the way software used to be sold. I mean, I was on Adobe Photoshop like 6.0 forever and a day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Everybody stayed on that one, yeah.
That's all I needed, or that's all I thought I needed. I didn't, everything was fine. I was, compressing my images and cropping things and using Photoshop the way I needed to use it. This is going to put the pressure on the developer. If you want to compete and sort of get out there and say, okay, well, this is going to save you money. I don't necessarily think that this is good for the developer, because every time you make a release, it's going to have to make a huge splash in order to garner some income. Right? Whereas a steady stream of income means that you can invest back in the product. You can invest in bug fixes, security fixes, taking care of your customers. So for a longer term software production, and like Nick was saying, with all of the complexities with different versions of PHP, different versions of WordPress, different versions. There's so many different types of things that you have to account for when you're doing QA on any kind of software for WordPress, because it's being plugged into, people are running WordPress on Windows servers. You've got to account for that. Are you going to support that?
Yeah.
There's so many different things. So kudos to them for doing this experiment. It'll be interesting to watch, but the onus is really going to be on them to create software that makes a big splash, that's going to attract enough users to get off of Photoshop 6, so to speak.
Yes, that's right. Interesting. Okay, so like I say, I know nothing about this plugin, but haven't they done a great job with the tiniest little pricing variation? They've managed to get loads of people talking about their product who perhaps otherwise wouldn't have mentioned it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we would have mentioned it because of whatever it does, but we're talking about it and we've probably said its name 100 times already. So they've done a good job from a PR perspective. Yeah, I think it's curious, the Sendy model. So this is the PHP emailing script, got nothing to do with WordPress. I kind of have real confidence in the developer there, and I have confidence that if something is truly broken, he will patch it going backwards. But also, I think it's like a total side gig for him. I'm sure he's got other things going on. And because of that, it doesn't get updated. You get these tiny little increments during the course of the cycle. And then you do get this big update, like you mentioned, Kathy. And it does feel worth it. Every time a point release has come on, I've dipped into my wallet almost immediately the moment it's dropped, because I think, actually, that's really cool. So, yeah, let's see how this goes. There's quite a few comments around this. Andrew Palmer, who was on the other week, he says that he started... Okay, so Andrew has Bertha.ai, which is an AI generation plugin for WordPress. He says, we've started doing a pay-as-you-go model on Bertha AI. People seem to like that. Oh, that's interesting. I love the pay-as-you-go update. So in your model, because people are consuming tiny little bits frequently and often, you can do that, because if they write a long form piece with Bertha, you can charge them a little bit more because it's longer. Yeah, that's interesting. Teresa makes the point that it's not predictable. We sort of had that one earlier. And Cameron, who has managed to stay up, thank you, Cameron. He says it's certainly interesting, but I think that underestimates how unsavvy some of the people are trying to use these plugins. Yeah, good point. Would be great for me as a dev, but I don't think it's sustainable. What Bertha AI are doing, this is Cameron still, with the pay-as-you-go is a better approach, but I think being a SaaS, that's a lot easier to do. And there's quite a few comments here today, isn't there? Has anybody picked up a comment which I need to say? Oh, yeah, ScreenFlow was mentioned, Peacher. Do you know, I've got the ScreenFlow rival called Camtasia. I don't know if anybody's used Camtasia. They do this really wicked little dark pattern where when it rolls onto the point update, the UI, the modal that pops up is exactly the same as all the other ones. So you click update, and then you realize you've been rolled onto the next model and you've got to pay for it. It's really annoying. It's really annoying because you've got to uninstall it and go back. Yes, it's just like, not so sure about that. Anyway, there we go. That was poststatus.com, and the article was called Winning Together in a Decentralized Plugin Ecosystem. Now, you may have eagle eyes here and notice that mentioned at the top of that article is another plugin called Newsletter Glue. I am a big fan of Newsletter Glue, and Newsletter Glue have another sort of curious story, kind of around pricing and things like that. They've decided they want to remove themselves from the WordPress.org repo. The reasons are slightly technical, I guess, more than anything else, in that when they started, they're very... I do love Leslie, by the way. Leslie's very kind of honest and, kind of honourable. And if something's... How to describe it? You could easily have concealed a lot of the detail within this post because it was, maybe you misstepped a few times, but she didn't, which she kind of basically says, we made a bunch of noob mistakes, which I think is lovely and honest in the way that we set up free versus paid. Basically, If you wanted to get the paid version of the plugin, which is fabulous, highly recommended, you had to uninstall the free version and then go and install the full version. Whereas I think in many cases the opposite is true. You keep the free version and then you add the features in with the sort of like pro plugin. So what basically happened is all of the features that are worth having, I think, are largely tied up in the paid version. So the free version wasn't doing anything. After several years, they'd only got 100 people using it because essentially they were all uninstalling it and going over to the paid version. So they've decided to remove themselves and kind of just put themselves out there and say, we made some silly mistakes. And I just thought this was a nice piece worth mentioning because of that and nothing more, just how honest and decent they are. Anybody want to chip in, go for it.
Well, I think Leslie highlights some interesting comments about new plugin developers and navigating the repo. I mean, I started on the plugin repo and building plugins and stuff. And it's the Wild West in many ways because you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. And I don't necessarily think that that's a downside, or there needs to be some sort of guide on WordPress.org to teach you how to build a for-profit plugin. But like the thing that she had to navigate with, how do you structure free versus pro, takes a lot to figure out. And I think that that's why we're seeing things like Freemius pop up and other, third parties that try to help people with that. But it's a challenging one. I think if you get it wrong, you run into the problem with Leslie. But the repo is such a powerful tool for visibility. I mean, if you can create that funnel from the repo to paid, it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. But structuring that's a bit challenging for sure.
Yeah, I'll just quote the bit where she sort of lays it all out. She said, as I said a moment ago, we made a bunch of noob mistakes in the way that we set up free versus paid, which made the customer upgrade workflow kind of weird. I think it could have worked. We just didn't set it up right, and it just doesn't make sense to fix it. I wonder if, given her time again, she would still be on the repo, as you said, a bunch of benefits to that. But in this case, it just doesn't make sense to disassemble the plugin, rebuild it, and kind of really try and start all over. They're just going to concentrate their efforts on their paying customers, which makes sense.
And I also think that...
Oh,
sorry, go for it.
I just wanted to say that they are very small because Newsletter Glue is created by only 2 people, right?
Yeah.
So, and the biggest problem about which we can hear when it comes to the official plugin repository is the support, which is, let's say, problematic. It can, by not responding to those free support, you can only generate, let's call it a bad name for yourself, right? Because you are not responding. And on the other hand, if you are spending too much time on a free plugin, you are just losing money. So, especially when you are such a small team, I really think that Leslie did a good thing, especially for them, because like I said, they are small. They have to pick their battles, and they just decided they will just go 100% premium. And as Nick mentioned, the official repository is a Wild West. It really needs a lot of love, and because it's really chaotic. I mean, it's enormous, it's big, but it's so hard to navigate. It's really hard to quite quickly discover which plugins are free, which are just partly free and are just promoting their paid versions. So in general, the plugin repository really should need. I mean, it needs a lot of changes. It should be rebuilt.
Can I just ask both Nick and Kathy? Can you hear Matchek echoing?
Yes.
Matchek, just underneath the screen is a little cogwheel, and one of the options under the audio setting is echo cancellation and noise suppression, because I can hear what I'm saying a second time, and I think it's coming through your connection. I'm not 100% sure that's true.
Let me mute.
Hello. Oh, no, I can still hear myself. And is he muted? No, he's not muted. So I think it
No,
is you.
no, it's not me. I was muted for a moment, so it wasn't.
Okay. I don't know. Okay, well, we'll carry on. Apologies for the echoey audio, basically, is the message there. Okay, so Kathy, anything on that?
Well, obviously, the repo is a huge opportunity. You end up in searchable in so many people's dashboards. It's a great opportunity to get in front of customers that you would never get in front of otherwise. The amount of effort it takes, like Matchy said, about just managing support in the repo. If you're not answering support questions, you don't even show up. So it's not just getting on the repo. You have to work the repo, and you have to work with all of the customers there. I know a specific plugin that I've consulted with where they weren't answering support. And even though they had tons of installs, they just kept going down further and further in the search, and they weren't even getting in front of customers because they weren't supporting. They were just, leaving it up to the community to support each other in the repo, and it just was not working for them. It's a huge effort. And if you're a small team, you have to prepare for that to be, if you're going to use that as a way to get leads, so to speak, into your flow from free to a premium model. It can be very effective. It just takes a ton of investment. I don't think a lot of people realize that when they get into it. They think everything's just going to be sunshine and roses. I'm in the repo and I'm in all of these dashboards. And it's work. You have to work it and you have to support it. And it's not really fun support, because there's a lot of people who, well, you gave me this software, so therefore you must want to do all of these features that I need for my vision of how your plugin should work. And so it's not fun support either. The paid customers are much more fun to support. But getting that perfect flow from free into a premium model can be very challenging. There's tons of, in the security space, we're always looking at these nulled plugins where people take the premium plugin, change some things in it, and then offer it on these nulled sites with a free dash of malware. So it's a very challenging business model that takes some experience and some knowledge in order to get that flow really working.
So yeah, that's all. I totally take that on board. That makes it is just such a big opportunity. Andrew's making some points in the comments. He's saying that when someone upgrades any of the plugins that he's involved with from free to pro, the license recognizing this, so there's no extra install. It's basically an EDD hook, which then releases the tiger, releases all of the fun stuff that the pro brings along for the ride. So and then he thinks that if that's the result, then Leslie might be missing out on an opportunity. Yeah, maybe Matt Check's point about the fact that there's two of them, they've got to pick their battles, and even okay, we'll come back to this in a year's time, kind of thing, and we'll see where we're at.
The magic really is. I just have one point. The magic really is if you can put in the premium an API access rather than just that's where the magic really is. If there's some kind of service that you can provide that requires some kind of API access, then you have much more control over that relationship, and that seems to work best.
Yeah, and I just want to mention about the repo is that it is truly a marketing thing. It's a marketing opportunity. And to Kathy's point about answering those support questions, doing releases frequently, I mean, all that plays into how you rank. So it's not just like you put your plugin out there and everything's going to be fine. You really got to work for it. But if you can, it's survival of the fittest. Like, you can get really high ranks. You can keyword optimize your listing. You can put in, FAQs. You can pretty much really optimize your listing and really get high up on the list, well above other maybe plugins that have more installs that aren't doing that. So it's an opportunity, but it takes a lot of work.
Somewhat out of the scope of WordPress, but always love a bit of Drupal. Let's throw this one in. This is Lax, who's making the comment that he loves how the Drupal module repository, so plugin replace word with module, has filters. So this is the piece about making it easier to discover things in the WordPress repo. WordPress could introduce some filtering and sorting options and making the discovery a little bit easier. And then Cameron makes the point that Gravity Forms, I did not know that. Gravity Forms used to be in the repository. They aren't now. And they're still doing pretty good. I'll say they're doing pretty good. Yeah, it's like an out-and-out success. I didn't know that. So they had a free version at one time and just decided to concentrate their efforts. Well, we'll come back and see how this all shakes out. WP, what was it? WP Optimize, if I remembered that correctly. And Newsletter Glue, lots of sort of interesting pricing discussions being had this week. Okay, let's move on. We're talking about marketplaces. This is the next thing. This is about the WooCommerce marketplace. There are some kind of eye-watering numbers here, and Maciek, I think, was quite curious about the percentages that were being charged here. This is Alex Denning writing on the 17th of August on the getellipsis.com website. The piece is called "Who's Winning on the WooCommerce Marketplace?" It's a long article. Alex really likes to get the graphs out and push the data in our direction. But the curious thing for me was essentially WooCommerce is winning on the WooCommerce marketplace. And what I mean by that is that the official WooCommerce things, the ones that are sponsored by Automatic, seem to be doing incredibly well. And I didn't know this. I've been in WordPress for a fairly lengthy period of time. I did not realize that until recently, there was a sort of lock-in mechanism, which meant that if you wanted to list your WooCommerce product plugin, let's say, on the WooCommerce marketplace, and you also wish to list it on your own website, in other words, give yourself a fighting chance of, taking all of the money for the plugin sale, then WooCommerce were going to charge you a fairly eye-watering 70% in commission. If, on the other hand, you decided to just go all in on the WooCommerce marketplace and say, look, it's just over there, then it was going to be a more typical 30%, which I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe it's kind of like what Apple do and Google do with their app stores and so on. I think it's 30-70, could be wrong. But that appears to have changed. They've now decided that they're going to just go with this one pricing model. The 70% has gone and the 30% is what's remaining. But look at that number. $85.5 million in estimated WooCommerce marketplace sales, but the vast majority of them, the top 5 are listed here. I won't bore you by reading all of the names out, but the 4 out of the top 5 are owned or are created by WooCommerce directly. So the marketplace does very, very, very well for those plugins created by that team. And I just wonder how competitive it is for anybody else. If you look over at this chart, I'm showing you a pie chart here. WooCommerce, as in the developers of WooCommerce. WooCommerce make up 44.1% of things that are sold by vendor share. Skyverge, which I believe, who owns Sky? Is it GoDaddy? GoDaddy, I think. Yeah. GoDaddy's Skyverge is at 17.2. Then there's another one called Pros Press, P-R-O-S Press. Confess, not heard of that. Is a pretty gigantic 16.3, and then everybody else make up the rest, and they're all tiny slices of the pie. You'd be gutted if you got a bit of pizza of their magnitude, put it that way. But the WooCommerce bit, you'd be nice and full up. So interesting statistics coming out of Get Ellipsis. I don't know if any of you wanted to comment on that, but the takeaway that I got was that I think it'd be jolly hard to compete against the WooCommerce behemoth in the WooCommerce marketplace. And I do wonder, 30%, although it's less than 70, still seems like quite a lot.
On the other hand, there is still a lot of market for let's call it local products. I mean, for example, in Poland, we have this company called WP Desk. Because in Poland, we have our own delivery services, our own payment gates, because, for example, PayPal isn't popular in Poland. In Poland, the most popular is, for example, PayU or Przelewy24. So they're really regional, only in Poland. So this company, WP Desk, thought of a model. Okay, so let's create everything that a Polish company would require. And I think that there are many companies in many countries where there is a great place. I mean, they won't ever reach this 1% of this whole of this whole WooCommerce.com pie, but it's not their goal. It's not their goal. It's just trying to. I mean, it turns out that picking all those small crumbs that fall off the table, you can really, really create quite a big company.
It's interesting. I'll just raise the next graph, which I confess I forgot was available. This graph, apologies if you're listening to the audio, but there's another graph on the screen now, which shows that really the vast majority of people in the WooCommerce marketplace, they're working in the $10,000 to $50,000 area. So you can see the line is just significantly bigger. The ones that we talked about a minute ago, the big five ones, they're in the sort of like $900,000 to $1 million. They're really at the end of the spectrum, and everything really skews towards the cheaper end. So I don't know. Well, Alex makes the point that they're really unable to tell you how long this period lasted for. In other words, we don't know if this was over a period of 6 months or a year. But you can sort of get the impression from this that really the bottom end of the money is where the vast majority of the marketplace sales are taking place. And so it's tough. It must be really, really difficult to make those, to sort of scrape your way over to the top. Anything above this sort of $350,000 mark, there's probably only 20, 30 plugins in total over there, whereas there's several hundred over on the other side. So anyway, there we go. Nick or Kathy?
Cameron just mentioned in a comment that PressPress is automatic too. So
there you go.
even more pizza.
Okay, so combined, they've really got much more than half of the pizza then if we did that. Cameron, what do they do? They build it. Oh, okay, you put it on the screen. Thank you. You're, as always, invaluable. PressPress build extensions around memberships. They're Aussie. There you go. They were actually bought out by Automatic recently-ish. So that slice belongs to WooCommerce too. Okay, so in a couple of years, the chart will look even more skewed, a bit more than 50%. Thank you, Cameron. That's very invaluable. Nick, anything?
I just think that, we're seeing now with both like in the block editor and in WooCommerce, where some of the low-hanging fruit in terms of features, instead of being isolated in plugins, are now being brought into WooCommerce itself or being brought into the block editor or WordPress itself. So maybe 5-10 years ago, those were plugins, and now a lot of that stuff's being pulled in or developed by WooCommerce itself. So I think people are just going to need to become more and more creative about the products that they're building to be, successful in such a competitive space.
And be more creative about going after the market and going after the customers who are using WooCommerce. The WooCommerce marketplace might not be the best place to go top of funnel finding new customers. You might want to get more creative in getting people into your space and into conversations and into your purchase process in other ways.
And really focus on niches, like you're talking about, like specifically for Poland or a specific industry. I think there's a lot of exploration there that's possible.
Yeah, I think the Poland analogy was excellent, wasn't it? I'm guessing those guys are kind of really cleaned up in the Polish market, which is fabulous.
That's true, and it's not so easy to do because you have to live in a country that is big enough so you can do it. And on the other hand, it wasn't took over by some global companies. For some reason, for so many years, Poland is fighting off eBay. Currently, we just got Amazon, but our local Allegro is still fighting hard. So for some reason, we really prefer our local products. Even if those local products were bought off by someone else, it doesn't matter, of course. But still, they seem at least local. But like I said, the same model trying to be built in Czechia or in Slovakia, it wouldn't be so easy because they are much smaller than Poland. So
yeah.
It's really difficult. It won't be possible everywhere. And understanding those niches is crucial. It's crucial because for some reason, people in this country prefer some solution over other. on the other hand, also something that for me was weird. Why Germans love paper money so much?
I did
don't
not
get
know
it.
that. I did not
Yeah,
know
they
that.
do. And it was weird for me. And this is again a thing, because you can think, okay, so let's do something like this in Germany, a big country, and this, but then you can hit this point that, but okay, but people don't like to go digital. So
Huh.
it might not work.
Yeah.
There are many things. I mean, in Germany, it's in many cases it's related to privacy.
Yes.
It's related to privacy. Really, Germans are, I would say, a bit paranoid from looking how, let's say, this global market looks like. But okay, that's great, because this is getting the balance between what is happening in, for example, United States, where, let's be honest, the privacy is. We will talk about this a bit later,
Yeah,
right?
we'll come to that.
We do.
The curious. Well, first of all, I'll do Andrew's comment because it's been on the screen for an absolute age. He says he's talking about WooCommerce in particular. WooCommerce makes so much money because their plugins in Woo are very expensive. Yes, that's a good point. High ticket prices obviously will skew that data a little bit. And now I've completely forgotten what it was that I was going to say. So we should probably just suck that one up and move on, if that's all right. Okie dokie. Right, I like this. I love the continual evolution of the block editor. It may be that you haven't seen the modal in Gutenberg for a little while, depending on how often you build new sites or whatever you manage them with. You might use a page builder or something like that. But when you first start to create pages and posts for the very first time in a WordPress install, or if you've cleared out your cookies telling it not to come back, then you get this fairly brief little modal that pops up, and it's called the onboarding modal, I guess. Sarah Gooding is writing in WP Tavern an article called Gutenberg Designers Explore Adding Configuration Options to the Block Editor Onboarding Model. So there was no interaction with that modal. It literally just showed you what a couple of the features were that were already present on the screen. Now, the idea is that perhaps it would be useful. I'll play this little video. Perhaps it would be useful in the future to have a more complicated, bigger, certainly, modal that pops up. But the intention is that it would allow you to customize the initial setup of your Gutenberg layout. So, for example, it might be able to say, for example, do you want the toolbar at the bottom, or do you want it sort of floating around the block where you're currently interacting? Select that now before we go any further. And it might, for example, say, okay, should we set up some basic, I don't know, accessibility settings or something like that? Let's do that right at the beginning. Nothing like this exists at the moment. And this is the proposal. The idea is that this might be a useful thing. It's not a feature which has been built, as far as I understand. This is just what looks like a kind of mock-up. But I'm all for this, to be honest. I think this is going to be a really useful way, especially in experienced people who are perhaps coming to WordPress for the first time. Gutenberg's, how shall we say? It's hard. It's a little bit disjointed. There's things buried in all sorts of different places. Go left, go right, toggle things open, toggle things shut. It's who knows where everything is if you're there for the first time and what they do. And so I think something like this could be a really useful endeavor. So I think, yes, I get 2 thumbs up for this. What do you guys reckon?
4.
Oh, nice. 4 so far. 4 out of 8.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of cool features that are hidden, like in the little options menu, that very few people ever click on or know that is there. So surfacing that, I think, would be very helpful. Caveat, as long as there's a way to turn it off for people that don't want it for their client sites, then, let's go. So
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't want it popping up all the time. And you do want to be able to turn it off on client websites if you're onboarding them yourself or doing something,
right,
or have a custom way of doing things. Yeah, good point. Okay, match it, Kathy.
I would love to see this, and I would love to see some real, very basic wireframe possibilities that people could, like, here are 3 different possible layouts you could jump in with, because
Okay.
I've watched people my 14-year-old daughter is learning WordPress right now. And she's like, but why can't I customize this in the customizer? That's where the customizing should be happening. She's like, don't ask hard questions. But getting her started, just getting a new person started with WordPress, they've seen websites, and we've all been on the web for 20 years. Like, they've seen what some possibilities of layouts can look like. Choose a basic wireframe, give people maybe 3 or 4 options that they could just get started with. And I think the onboarding of new users will be a lot easier.
Do you know, Kathy, that's interesting, because my memory at the minute is terrible and I can't remember, but I have a feeling that just a matter of weeks ago, we talked about exactly this, the idea that this would be happening in the block editor. And I can't remember if I got it off the Tavern or a Make post, but that there will be something like this. Okay, so now we've got a collision of 2 different things, haven't we? If they're both happening, they've pretty much both got to happen at the same time. I'm guessing that the settings you'd want to come first and then the layout second. Oh, Nick's definitely got something to say. Good.
So you can actually do that now with what are called page creation patterns. So if you define a pattern, and then usually it's in themes. It's not in WordPress core, but it's in, it will be in the 2022 theme or 2023 theme, hopefully. Is that like when you go to create a new page or post, it gives you a modal and you can pick from some preset designs that the theme author has provided. You could do that for your client site or something like that. So that functionality is there. It's not very visible. Like, for example, like the documentation on patterns doesn't include it yet. It's on my to-do list to fix, but like some of that stuff is there. And I think we'll start to see everything kind of coming together in 6.1, where you have a new onboarding modal and you can do page creation patterns. And
so
allow people to get on board.
Yeah. Would you like to see the onboarding modal followed by the page templating experience all in one modal, basically? So in other words, you could skip through this, the setting up the accessibility settings or whatever it may be, if you're not bothered with that, and then eventually you'll get to the final part, which maybe here's some possible templates for your page. Would you like to see it all in one UI modal at the start?
It might make sense to just blank page. Hey, what do you want this to look like? Like, that's the place where maybe that happens, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So if somebody's like fresh install, they go through that piece where they're setting up the basic settings. And then they're going to build a page, right? Is that the first thing they're going to do? And maybe that's the place where they get some kind of wireframing ability where they can, or patterning ability.
Right.
Are you building a home page? Are you building an about page? Are you building a contact page? And they can just click and.
Okay, so it's kind of invoked either when you begin typing in the title, or possibly when you've done the title and then you go and put the first block in. So a good example is in Cadence, when you drop in the kind of container block, then it sort of just chucks in this other UI underneath with all these different grid options. And it's not there until you've decided to put a container in, and then it's there. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I've got these pre-built 20 different options that I can go for. I'm going to go for that one. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Well, and then Cadence also has a design library where you can actually get like fully templated pages as well as wireframes from which to build it.
That lives in a button at the top, right? Next to, okay, top left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something like that would be really helpful, just beyond, everybody should be using Cadence, right? But, just in core. It makes sense to give that kind of guidance to a new user who's just looking at WordPress for the first time. And that blank pages are hard for everyone. It's hard for writers. It's hard for designers. For a WordPress user who's just coming in for the first time, that hand-holding really needs to happen.
Yeah, the modal's great because you can't avoid it. Like, you can dismiss it, but it's there. You've got to make an active decision to shut it down. Whereas the template button, you can easily avoid it. I mean, unless you do something nefarious like make it flash and blink, which nobody wants, by the way. But it's easy to miss that, to even know that that's there, and just to, you see the big blue publish button and everything else is sort of black and gets ignored. But I do like the idea of it being invoked right at the beginning, and you just run through that the one time. And maybe, learn about the /keystroke so that you can see all the blocks and all the different things. That might be quite a useful thing. Peter Ingersoll is, he says he really, really wants more control over the right sidebar settings, meta boxes in the editor, width order, etc. What do you mean by that, Peter? Do you mean you want to be able to set up a default right at the start where everything's sort of locked down, or do you just find it a mess and a clutter and you don't know where everything is, or do you just want to be able to switch things off and turn things on and so on? And block locking, I guess we're talking about here, Pete, Robert, Peter. The one thing I do want is the ability to lock out more. That's definitely being worked on. You can now lock at the parent level, can't you? But I still think my understanding is that anybody can unlock anything. It's more of an anecdotal lock than a real lock.
You can configure it, but you have to do it in PHP. So you can lock it down by user role, but it's not like in the UI. You have to do that.
That will be truly a great moment when that arrives, actually, for people building websites for clients. The ability to lock on a per block basis, or however that's set up, whatever crazy configuration you want to do. Once that UI and that ability is built out, the idea that, okay, there's your site, you can't mess anything up.
So let me put the two together. So imagine you get your modal, and they can select from a bunch of designs and they insert it, but some of those are locked. So they insert a design, but then some of them are locked, so they can't mess them up, but then they can edit certain pieces. So it provides like a consistent experience. So you can mix and match locking and unlocking.
So you can I don't know, edit the title. You can swap out this image, but you can't change the background color and all of it. Yeah, all of that stuff. It's like nerd heaven, isn't it? It's just get so thick in the weeds. What am I going to lock? And then of course you realize like 24 hours later, I've locked way too much. They've no idea what they're doing. Haven't a clue. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, he's replied. Peter said mess and clutter, but both and all your examples. For example, categories have been pushed too far down for users to easily see and use. Okay. Sometimes boxes too thin. Why boxes? Do you mean the actual meta boxes, the title that you have to open? I confess, I'm kind of happy with where I'm at, but I can imagine a client would just be like, so yes, okay. And then Cameron saying, I find I'm always forgetting to add categories and featured images because they're hidden. Yeah, they're all closed, aren't they? That's a good point. Previously, where they're right there in the sidebar, you'd have to right tab and open and then expand. Yes, you do. You have to go through. I don't know how you guys do it. Let's do a bit of a segue. Do you have a process just before you click publish of going through every single meta box to make sure that it's all been filled out? Because that's what I do. I go through the right sidebar first, check the permalinks right, open the next one, check the category, open the next one, check the tabs, open the next one, fill out the excerpt. Right, done. Then I go through the post itself. Then I do the meta boxes underneath. And when I'm happy, I then walk away from the computer, completely forget what I've checked, come back 20 minutes later and do it all again. That's what I do.
Efficient. I love it. That's basically what I do as well.
Yeah, efficient. Hey, that's a good idea. Wouldn't it be good to be able to check those off as you go through them? Little tick box. Did the tags. That sounds like the sphere of publish press.
In a way, Rich Tabor created a small plugin for a checklist you can use, and it's only visible in the admin panel. So
oh, thank you. If you're able to find that, then I'll stick it in the I'll stick it in the show notes. That'd be great if you want to go googling quickly.
I will find it after.
Thank you. Okay, have we done that piece? I think we all like it. I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. 2 from Matt Check. Nick's like at 1. No, he did 2 in the end. Okay, there we go. I think we got 8. I think it was 8 out of 10. No, 8 out of 8. That's good. All right, let's move on. So, the lovely Rightis reached out to me this week. Speaking, crikey, occasionally we segue into something perfectly, completely by accident. And here we've done it. If you're a Visual Composer fan, if you've used Visual Composer before and you've just listened to the last 5 minutes of what we've been talking about in Gutenberg, they have solved that problem for you. There's now a blank page wizard, and there it is. That's their implementation. That's what it looks like. Essentially, at the very beginning, if you are on a blank page and you're looking for inspiration, you're now going to have the option to sort of go through a bit of a wizard to fill things out, various different choices. There's a theme default layout, a blank page layout, and there's custom layouts. And if you're on the Pro version, I think it's called Premium as opposed to Pro, then you get all of their custom layouts as well. I didn't know, to be honest, that Visual Composer didn't have that. But now it does. So hopefully I have discharged my responsibility there, Rightus. Okay, anybody want to talk about that, or shall we move on? I think
I just think it's cool how some of these third-party, we're starting to see some more parity between like the block editor and third-party. There's people, so people can choose. Like if you want some functionality, like you have the page creation blocks in the block editor, but you also have this blank page wizard in Visual Composer. They're kind of informing one another now, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever came across a wizard like that. And it wasn't really a wizard in that it didn't interrupt my flow. I had to go and find it. But it was I think it was Beaver Builder. I'm pretty sure it was Beaver Builder years and years ago. And I remember just seeing this tiny little thumbnail and thinking, oh, that looks curious. What happened? I clicked it. Oh, everything changed. How easy was that? That's ridiculous. And I love all that kind of stuff. And it obviously for users. And Kathy, who was it who was training their kids? Was it you, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So my daughter.
When lockdown happened, I tried to educate my 11 and 13-year-old boys at the time. They're a bit older now, in WordPress. And honestly, took me 3 minutes to realize there was no path to success in Gutenberg back in 2000 and whenever it was, 2020 when all that started. I feel if I dragged them back in now, kicking and screaming, I think things would be an awful lot easier. But nah, it didn't. I didn't even get past breakfast and had given up. It just didn't happen. Okay, right. Next thing. Okay, this one is not from me. This one, I believe, who gave us this one? Was this Nick?
Oh, yes. So one of the things that we see, if you work exclusively in the block editor, one of the things that I've been frustrated about and other builders have been frustrated about is just a lack of consistency. So you can edit margin on this block, but you can't do it on this block, or you can edit color on this one, but not on this one. And so this is this is an effort to standardize everything. And I could not be more excited, which was why I wanted to bring this up here. In the last week or so, we've been really kicking this off. And there's been like tons of PRs being merged. So it's the massive consistency effort ahead of 6.1 that's been kicked off. And I could not be more excited. Because for a user, it's so frustrating. They learn how to change typography and they're excited. And then they go to the next block and some of the typography controls aren't there, And so making everything consistent will really help with new users. It will help people build themes and, kind of push the whole thing forward. So very excited.
I think, by the way, you've come across what this initiative should be called. Actually, you call it the massive consistency effort, and that's brilliant. You're completely right. This is the reason that my children didn't get past 3 minutes, basically, because nothing made any sense.
Yeah,
and it makes no sense that it doesn't make sense. That's a bit meta, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
And it should make sense and it should be consistent, but I realize that's a boatload of work. But what a great project.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you. That's all I have to say is thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So what would be the constraints around this? Because, okay, so if we're going to present things uniformly across different blocks and so on, is that going to be, how to describe it? Are we going to ask other plugin developers to sort of abide by certain guidelines so that everything looks consistent, even if you've chucked in a third-party equivalent, let's say Cadence, right? And they've got their own way of having tabs and so on and so forth. Or is this just going to be for the core blocks only?
This is for core blocks, but it establishes block supports. So, for example, take padding and margin, for example, the dimension supports. I could write my own plugin and my own block plugin and specify padding and margin support, and automatically I'd have padding and margin support. But the thing is that a lot of this, as that functionality was developed, some blocks that were developed beforehand didn't get those supports. So you could change padding on one block, but not on another. So this really is like, let's make sure that every block has padding and margin support. Now, but we also want to make sure that using the theme.json file, somebody who doesn't want that for their client can turn that off. So one, the supports are there, and two, there's a way to turn it off for people that don't want it on their client site or even in their own site. So it was kind of a two-handed approach, making sure that the supports are there, but plus there's a way to turn it off, and also that it works correctly, once you implement it. So
I genuinely, and I don't mean to sound inflammatory about this, and I hope it comes out in the right way. I wonder how many people just took one look at the block editor and just got a massive sense of what you've just talked about, the inconsistency of it all, and was just like, no, this is just too weird for me.
It's the number one complaint I see. Number one.
Yeah. Oh, equally, even the people who want to keep trying it, keep coming back and making the same claim. So, that would be great. Okay, we'll be back here in 2028 with the with the consistent UI. It'll be perfect, I swear.
One thing I want to mention is that, obviously Cadence has a number of blocks that are very compatible with Gutenberg. If you're using Gutenberg and you use Cadence blocks, they are going to work much in the same way. We watch what you guys are doing with Core, and we want to make sure that all of our blocks have an intuitive feel so that when someone is using a Cadence block, it has the same kind of consistency, that the user might see that it's just a different color on the icon, but it still has the same settings in the same place for that consistency, because we're all here for the same reason, to make WordPress easier and better for everyone. So I think it's great that the core team is jumping on this, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, but Cadence has done such a great job of like providing that consistency that wasn't in Core, right? Like all your blocks have the same functionality that Core did not have. So it's
there's a couple where you're set at where a setting is it's just kind of like not entirely consistent. But Ben is reworking a lot of that now for I don't know if it's going to be 2.5 or if it's going to go actually to 3, because he's factoring a lot of that so that it is consistent. But we'll be watching what Core is doing, just because we want it to be a seamless process when somebody is working with a Core block and they're working with a Cadence block. It still feels the same, because it's such a rewarding experience for a user to work with an interface that feels consistent and feels, they know where to find things, and they get rewards in such small ways that end up making a big reward of working with WordPress.
Yeah, there is nothing better than muscle memory when you're putting a web page together. You just know exactly where that setting is, and the mouse just finds it. You don't even have to think. You just, okay, it's down there, click, done. And the frustration of where is it? Is it up a bit, left a bit? No, I totally get it. This is such a great thing. Okay, so I will add this to the show notes, which will go out in the newsletter tomorrow, which coincidentally uses newsletter glue, just so that you know. Okay, let's check out the next one. Unless Matt Check's got anything about that. If not, we'll press on.
No, everything was covered. I mean,
okay,
it's great. It's really great that it will be consistent.
WordCamp US is just around the corner. If you were lucky enough to get a ticket, then you can attend the event. 650, I believe. If you were not, fear not. Let's go to the sessions page first. The sessions, which had to be pointed out to me, were in alphabetical order. I just was frustrated that they were all in a completely random order. They're on listed now, by the way. If you go to us.wordcamp.org/2022/sessions, you're going to find all of the sessions there. Because there's such a small amount of attendees, I think it's probably fair to say that it's a bit slimmed down from something perhaps WordCamp EU, but loads and loads to choose from. So go and check those out. But also, if you are the kind of person that likes to contribute, and let's be honest, I think a lot of us do, then Contributor Day is going to be on the 11th of September, and it's going to happen in the beautifully titled Pacific Ballroom, which sounds wonderful. I hope we get a break halfway through to just get up and do some moves. That'd be kind of bring in the orchestra. Let's all do the Charleston. So there you go. If you're interested in finding out more about Contributor Day, I'll link to this in the show notes, but you can participate. The commonly asked question is, do I need to be a developer? And the answer is a big, big categorical no. There's opportunities for, literally everybody. No matter what your skill set is, there is a team that you can slot into. And it's not, honestly, the scope is massive. And if you've never done this before and you're feeling a bit nervous, just rock up. Give it half an hour, sit yourself somewhere suitable, and I'm sure that you'll have a nice time and very likely make some new friends at the same time. So
I'll be there and I'll walk you through it.
There you go. Nick's going to be there wearing his WP Engine t-shirt, I'm guessing, and he can show you the ropes. But yeah, happening soon. Which of you lot are going? Should we do a quick show of hands? Obviously, Nick's going. Kathy, you're going?
Tentatively, yes. Got some life challenges, but I'm going to fly in and get all my stuff done and then probably fly out the same day look for me.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right. I'll keep an eye for you.
Yeah. Maciek, are you going to go?
No, I'm staying here in Poland.
Staying for this one. I'm going. I've decided to go. So
awesome.
I shall see you there. I'm really excited. I just can't wait. I'm having a family holiday, which butts right up against it. So I'm going to arrive in a slightly bedraggled state. But what's new? I hear them say. Okay, so we've been talking a little bit about Cadence on and off. Obviously, Kathy is helping the efforts over at Cadence. And Cadence, if you didn't know, have this fabulous thing called Shopkick. So it enables you to really kind of hijack WooCommerce and the way it looks and fiddle around with it in ways that really you'd have had to have hired a developer or learn those things yourself. Shopkick 2.0 is out. I am not the person to talk about it. Kathy is. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy and tell us what Shopkick 2.0 can do. What's the headline items here, Kathy?
Well, the biggest headline item is those WooCommerce product page layouts that you couldn't change unless you got into the code and were actually like manipulating PHP and all of that. Now you can do this with no code. You can do this using just the Cadence blocks, core blocks. You can set up basic templates that will allow you to set up the product pages. However, it's right for your customers, for your business, showcasing your products the way it works for you. I'm really excited because I'm starting to see some of the Cadence users kind of blowing what WooCommerce looks like out of the water and doing some creative and innovative things. And so I have I'm either going to be made fun of or I am going to be like the wisest sage in the world, because I'm saying that this is going to change WooCommerce. This is going to change e-commerce because of the creativity that it's putting into designers' hands. You can also like use galleries and put videos in it now. And there's so many different, I think there's 15 different modules that unlock WooCommerce so that people can work with it without touching a line of code. And
so
it's fire.
You can move things that are, traditionally fixed on the right. You can float them left instead, and you can change the position of the images. And basically you can just adapt it inside the block editor. So you use the settings on the right, fiddle, get a template that you're happy with. And from that moment on, you apply some conditionals to it? You might have a category or something like that, and it's going to work on, Yeah.
You can basically set it up so that you can say all of my products are going to look this way, or just this category is going to look this way, or just this one product is going to look this way. And so there's all these different higher level types of things where you can apply templates to all of your products. Some of your products, one of your products, it's really flexible and powerful. And it's done, using templating rather than just going into editing all of your product data. We've really separated the design of the page from where the data is being stored, which is, to me, the power of WordPress is the fact that design happens in one way and data happens in another way, like, typical database design works. So it's just really powerful. Our audience, the Cadence audience, is super excited about this. I'm excited to see more and more people using this. WooCommerce is so powerful. And, whether you're a huge company starting to migrate over to it, or somebody who's just getting started and you don't want to pay a monthly fee for, that's basically going to break your bank. WooCommerce gives you tons of different ways to get started, and this is putting more and more control into the hands of the people who are closest to the customer, and that means that sites are going to work better for the end users.
A couple of headline items as well. First of all, first thing I've got to say, if you can get me that sofa for $499, I will have it immediately, because that's a bargain. And secondly, there's a couple of other items, isn't there? So you optimize your checkout workflow.
Yes.
Are you able to briefly, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, well, obviously, if you are trying to, you want people to put things into your cart, and you want to then, when they get to that point, you want to take away all of the difficult decisions and make it easy for them to hand over the money as fast as possible. And it's different for each storefront. You know, some stores need to know about delivery and all of these things when they're checking out. Some, it's just boom, it's an easy download type of situation. You don't need a lot of data from the end user who's buying. So you want to make sure that your checkout is customizable, and Shopkick does that. So it really reduces the friction for getting that sale.
Nice. Okay, so that's part of the Cadence bundle, right? Or can you buy Shopkick as a separate thing?
Yep, you can buy it as a separate thing. And you don't even need to use Cadence blocks if you're just going to use the other modules. The product page layouts do use Cadence blocks, so you'll need to, I recommend that you just get the full bundle, because there's so many other things in it. I'm not going to give you a sales pitch. You can go look. But the full bundle gets you Cadence Blocks Pro and gets you Shopkick, as well as, updates. It's a subscription model. So the full bundle is the way to go if you're going to do Shopkick, just because it gives you so much. But you can buy it a la carte, and you don't even need to use Cadence Blocks if you're not going to do the product page layouts, if you just wanted to use something else within the plugin.
Very cool. Very, very cool indeed. Yeah, I remember seeing the video that you did about, I don't know, a month ago or something. Was it you? I'm sure it was you. And you just sort of did it in about 20 minutes. You customized something. Oh, no, it was Ben. It was Ben.
It was Ben. And the iThemes training. Yeah, he did a great job there.
That's right. I watched all of that and thought, actually, that is blooming marvelous. Very, very cool indeed. So blocks. Ta-da, we love the blocks. Right. Okay. Curiously, another step. So Cadence is a company, the parent of which is Stellar, WP. Iconic is also another brand under that umbrella. Iconic also do WooCommerce. So this is kind of like a curious overlap. Are these competing things? Or let's hope not. What's Flux Checkout? Flux Checkout's new theme. First of all, what's Flux Checkout? And then what's Flux Checkout's new theme?
Yeah, Flux Checkout is basically a plugin that allows you to customize your checkout, and it's extremely fast. They have a previous classic design, and this is their new modern design, and it really does similar types of things, but it just makes that checkout process friction-free and painless. Allows your users to just get what they need and what they want and get out of there fast. And there's some people who are like really into blocks, and there's some people who maybe are not, and they want to use something like Flux. So it's really two different kinds. There's so many different ways that people can use WooCommerce, and so many different ways that people can, customize their checkouts. And these products serve different markets, really. So we have friendly conversations about what we see in the marketplace, but we don't really see these as competitive products, because different audiences buy these.
Thank you. So this is, I'll put all the links to these in the show notes. It looks like from the big red banner at the top, which you can't ignore, it's cheaper at the minute, 30% off. So you got until the, 15th of September, if you like the look of a Flux Checkout. Okay, let's do Maciek's bit next, if that's all right with you, Maciek. I sort of foisted you on that one without it was going to possibly come toward the end, but here we are. You are running a fabulous event entitled, I say you are, I don't know if it's you individually,
Yes,
Going Headless with Next.js and WP GraphQL. Again, I'll link in the show notes, and this is the registration page, but who might be interested in attending such a webinar? What it's all about?
I mean, we all are hearing constantly the words about Jamstack, headless, and some people just would like to see what it is, how to start, and learn something from from Fran from WP Engine, because he will be helping me in building such a simple app using headless WordPress together with Next.js and WP GraphQL. I mean, in general, we are doing those webinars not only about headless WordPress, but about different topics related to the web in general. Once every 2 weeks. This time it's headless WordPress, but last 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, we had a webinar about debugging PHP and so on and so on. So in general, it's worth following those webinars. There are sometimes very, very interesting topics. For example, we also had Milana Top, and we discussed about WordPress documentation and how it's made. So it's really worth joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I get the regular email updates. Actually, I don't know if it comes through email or if it comes through a LinkedIn connection we've got. But yeah, these events come thick and fast, don't they? And this time, if you're interested in headless, which really is, everybody's talking about it, and I confess I am not that knowledgeable about it. So you're going to be joined by Fran, who is WP Engine. There's another nice coincidence. Look at that.
Shout out to Fran.
Yeah, yay. Okay, yeah, good. So importantly, when is it? 24th of August. So
this week,
yeah.
This week, exactly.
Wednesday, 5 p.m. UTC. If you go to the page, which I will link to in the show notes, but just go to body.works and then /webinars.
Sorry, to Cameron's comment, is there going to be a replay? Yes, of course, it will be on YouTube. So.
Okay, great. Okay. The sign-up form is there. You've got 2 days to sign up, and I'm assuming that if you sign up for that one, you'll be getting updates about the future ones as well. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. All right, let's go for this one next. So we're going to step away from WordPress for a minute because I think we need to worry ourselves. It's not a good thing to get through this week in WordPress without a certain degree of worry. Today's worry is brought to you courtesy of Ring Doorbells. Oh boy. Okay. So if you buy a Ring doorbell, it's got a camera. Of course it has. That's kind of like the point. You can, record that data and see who's been looking, see what your cat's been up to and see if anybody's intruded in your house. Probably what you didn't anticipate. And I don't care what the small print says. Nobody's expecting the Amazon people to be able to just give that data away. So this is the Bruce Schneier website, which is fabulous, by the way. Regular updates and gets really down in the weeds with security. It's entitled Ring Gives Video to Police Without a Warrant or User Consent. Amazon has revealed that it gives police videos from its Ring doorbells without a warrant and without consent. I won't bore you with any of the details, but basically that's it. So if you've got a Ring doorbell and you live in the US, what can I say? Have no expectation that anything you do is private. If you've got them spread throughout your house, I don't know why you'd have a Ring doorbell in your house, but presumably it extends to the other Ring products as well. Now, is it just me, or is this just weird that you get this stuff and it's probably in the small print somewhere that we will give this away without a warrant when the police just say, can we have that? Or should the expectation not be exactly the opposite? That if you have a product like this, it should never be given away at all, ever, unless, I don't know, there's a big fight in the courts to get it out of the Ring people. I could be wrong. Over to you.
I mean, it's Amazon. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah. I'm going to get taken down now. I'm going to get a lawsuit, aren't I?
Yeah, it's like being surprised that, I don't know, Google shared some data that I just search or anything.
I don't know. I think it goes a little bit further though, because I think like the data that Google's got on me. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's location data, it's messages, and so on and so forth. But it's not the video. It's not the actual video.
Are you sure?
And it's no. Oh my Lord! Get me the tinfoil hat quickly. But this is presumably it's scooping up like what your kids are doing on your front lawn and what your neighbors are doing, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's, the house over the street got burgled or something like that. But surely they should come to you and say, look, this has happened. We've taken your data just so that you know. But I'm guessing, if you're up to no good, that's exactly what they wouldn't tell you. Oh, I don't know. Kathy, I want your opinion on this because you're into security.
I'm willing to give up all of my video footage for everything, as long as I can have the footage of Jeff Bezos, everybody
Boom.
at Google, some politicians, perhaps. If privacy goes away for me, privacy goes away for them.
That's a great riposte. I love it. So okay, that we've both been quite glib about it, and I suspect that given that actual scenario playing itself out, which is unlikely, essentially what you're saying is no, this should not happen. This should not be allowed.
In theory, it should not happen. It is happening, though. But I think that what is happening is that there is sort of this leveling of the playing fields where, I've seen a lot of hacker culture, and I've seen a lot of people going after a lot of things, and it is there's been all of our history has been very top-down managed, where the advantages have all been to a privileged few. And I believe that technology is leveling that playing field and is making it a lot harder for people to do things behind closed doors. I really do think that they don't get to have the power over us as much anymore, because so much more information is becoming more and more available. They can censor as much as they want, but what they're doing to us in terms of violating our privacy is going to bite them, so to speak, in the rear end.
I think the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, sum it up beautifully. I mean, if you just pause this sentence and actually dwell on it for a second, police are not the customers for Ring. The people who buy the devices are the customers. And I don't care what it says in those terms and conditions. There's no way that in the advertising material for Ring Doorbell, one of the key benefits is warrantless, egress of data to police. There's just anyway. I'm sort of ranting.
Although this would be a very, very original and interesting way to market a product. No, really, warrantless video sharing or something like this. Really,
okay.
No one did it. No one did it yet. I mean, almost. I mean, we have. But...
Well, this is why Bitcoin came about, right? It's happened after the 2008 situation where there was all kinds of nefarious, the war on Wall Street and all of this nefarious types of things were happening behind closed doors. And Bitcoin kind of came about of everything. Sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. So I think that if we are going to have our privacy violated, if this is going to happen, and it seems to keep happening over and over again, whether it be, your cookies in your browser, or if it's, your Ring doorbell, all of these other types of things, let's push it. Let's make everything open source. Let's make everything out in the open. Let's put sunlight on everything. Let's see what happens then. I'm feeling very rebellious today.
Yeah, you are. It's good.
I love the situation that in such cases, most politicians will say that if you aren't doing anything bad, you shouldn't be worried about things like this.
Yeah,
right.
That old
I always love this, because every time we have such a situation in Poland, we have those that are ruling. Someone has to say this phrase, and at some point, one of our technological blogs started asking those people who said this sentence, okay, so if you are saying things like this, could you give us your phone so we can publish once an hour a screen of your phone, of your messages or everything?
Yeah, it
never,
doesn't hold water,
never. They didn't. The fun fact is they didn't even respond, which is kind of illegal, because as public figures and politicians, they should respond in the term of 2 weeks or 1 month, something like this. But they should.
Anyway, I got myself all
But
heated
still,
there, didn't I?
warrantless video. Nathan, you really should go for the marketing role.
And no less than the Malaysian Pilots Association are telling me to preach. So there you go. Hello, Malaysian Pilots Association. I have no clue what that's about.
I have a clue.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay, great. Okay, that's good. If it's humorous, I'm all for it. Okay, so from one ridiculous thing to another, and then we'll probably have to knock it on the head. Okay, right. Just lovely. Did you know, right? The Guardian told us this week that the only reason you can talk is because evolution decided that our vocal apparatus was going to be less sophisticated than primates. So I'm going to link to this in the show notes. It turns out that things like gorillas have these, what are they called? There's like these appendages to the larynx, and they're like bags full of air, and they enable these lovely creatures to produce enormously loud sounds. But they also stifle the ability to manipulate that sound carefully. We, stupid creatures that we are, we decided to get rid of these in an evolutionary masterpiece and developed the ability. And so it is the more basic model of larynx, which allows us to speak, which I think says everything. Love this story. I don't suppose anybody's got anything to say about that, but I had to share it.
Well, this is what we're doing on the internet, typing to each other rather than talking, right? Since we've evolved.
I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. And should we do this one very quickly? Let's get back onto something a bit more, on message. Let me pick the right one. No, I'll leave the Spectra one if that's all right, because we're going to run out of time. XWP produced an article this week. It's called Pizza Isn't a Perk, a Response to the Anti-Remote Argument. Maciek, was this from you?
Yes, it was.
So I love working from home. I've been working from home for the longest period. But in the XWP blog this week, an article cropped up, and I think basically it came from the Right Honourable Malcolm Gladwell, who, seems to produce an awful lot of incredibly cool material. But he's kind of rejecting the idea that working at home is a good thing. The fact that you can work in your pajamas is not a benefit. Well, I'm here, Malcolm, to say you're wrong. The slippers and the pajamas, they're the whole point, right? That's what it's all about. What do you think? The pandemic's it's gone. Maybe you all work from home anyway. Maybe there was no change for you. But you all looking at your little icons there, you all look like you're working from home at the moment. Are you going to take Malcolm's advice and go back to the office because that's where the real work's done? Or are you going to stay in your PJs?
I did it once because most of my career I was working remotely. So I can say that I worked remotely before it happened, before it started to be cool. And once I decided, okay, I will go to work at an office. I will see how is it, all those coffee meetings, this whole office culture, this, I don't know, Fruity Friday or whatever. The worst year ever, in short. It's horrible. It is such a waste of time to commute. On the other hand, it's so easy to get distracted. I mean, I know it also depends on the role you are doing.
Right.
Because probably for project manager, it's much better to have everyone at one place so they can go from desk to desk and ask, hey, how is it going? Hey, how is it going? Of course, it could be sent through email or Slack, and on the other hand, for me as a developer, it was horrible because I couldn't focus. Why? Because of this project manager.
That's genius. Cyclical argument. Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, and I mean it's really easy to get distracted in the office, and I always felt that I mean we had this argument also with my wife, and she shares the same opinion that the amount of work we did during 8 hours at work, we would be able to do in about 4 or 5 working remotely.
Peachaneri's in the comment, and she says that she's been working forever and really likes it. And she also we're not condoning this, everybody. We're not condoning it. She says she's going to burn all of Malcolm Gladwell's books from this point on. But she also makes the really good point, and obviously we're being flippant, right? I more or less can guarantee that none of us are actually wearing pajamas right now.
No, this is, I mean, the way to, I mean, it's difficult to learn how to work remotely. It's not like working in the pajamas. I mean, in most cases, the moment you start working in your pajamas, you're doing it wrong. I mean, I have a friend, for her, and for her, the moment when she started work, it was the moment when she put her bra on. That's like it. You can't work remotely without the bra. That's it.
I have got 2 possible titles for this week's episode. The first one is it doesn't make sense that it doesn't make sense. And then if you're wearing pajamas, you're doing it wrong. I don't know which one's gonna win out, but that's it. Unless Nick and Kathy have got something to say about that, I don't want to hold you beyond the time that's allotted, and we have just eclipsed that time. So if you want to say something, you're free. I'm fine. But if you need to get off the call,
I've been remote for about a decade now, even in my previous job, and I do think that it takes a lot to get used to it, and not everybody likes working from home and likes that camaraderie with fellow employees and whatever. So I like the approach of do it works best, and I know not every company can do that, but if there are companies that allow people to work from home or people that want to come into the office, I think that's a nice thing if it's possible.
Yeah, give people a choice. Yeah, that's a good point. Kathy, anything to add just before we knock it on the head?
I'm a remote worker, and I feel like work needs to fit around our lives rather than our lives fitting around work. That's how I'm going to leave it.
We should
I
all
also like the thing that Pictionary just wrote. Working remotely is not the same as working from home. And by the way, this is also an interesting thing, because lately I see that the term working from home is getting much more attention rather than working remotely. I don't know why. Maybe it's easier to connect it with those pajamas.
Yeah, I think people used to often, before COVID, they used to go to the Starbucks and hang out there, didn't they? Whereas now we're all during COVID, we were definitely at home. Okay, I'm conscious of the time. I don't want to hold anybody beyond the 90 minutes that we agreed to. So firstly, thank you so much. I enjoyed that, as always. Lovely chat. Nice chatting to Kathy and to Nick and to Maciek. We'll be back. Oh, no, we won't. I've got to look at the calendar quickly. We're having a bit of time off because I'm going on holiday. Let me just have a quick look. I think it might be as much as 3 weeks away. What's the date today? It is somebody help me out. It is so I'm having next week off and the week after that. Yeah, I'm literally having 3 weeks off. I've never done that before in my life. I'm going to stay in this room and wear some pajamas, and it's going to be fabulous, but I won't be putting the computer on. So I'll see you in a month's time. This show will be postponed. Until then, I hope that you can all cope. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Oh, no, we've got a wave. We've got to do the wave. Sorry, Nick. I don't know if you've prepared. Yeah, give us all a bit of a wave. Got the wave. Don, thank you very, very much indeed. We'll see you in a month's time or 3 weeks' time. Take it easy.